Okay, we're officially beginning our class on continuing the molecular relationship. We're talking about the two types of communication that people make. Either they communicate, they try to do it in an honest way, or else they're dishonest. And dishonesty is caused by a number of things. Uh, it's usually kind of a domino effect. It starts with little dishonest steps followed by bigger dishonest steps, and then you have to cover your ground. And like if a person has an affair or something like that, there was dishonesty that led up to the affair, and then there's greater dishonesty covering up the affair and so on. Is just one example out of many. There's all kinds of temptations in life to be dishonest, and it takes a tremendous amount of focus and intelligence to be able to be an honest communicator, because much of our dishonesty in communication is almost subconscious. People don't even think about it, and oftentimes people don't even know they're being dishonest. For instance, let's say somebody asks you a question and you think, you instinctively feel if you were honest, you'd hurt their feelings. So you don't even think about giving a somewhat dishonest answer, perhaps. But to be totally honest, you have to think about it and think about how to do it harmlessly. So, like you say, one thing that hurts people's feelings is telling them they're overweight. So you tell somebody, yeah, you're fat, well, you know that's going to hurt their feelings. So, but if you have to acknowledge the person is overweight, there's no way around it. You can say it diplomatically, so that it doesn't really hurt them. So we need to communicate in as harmless a way as possible. And it's impossible to be honest and not hurt feelings or not arouse negativity completely, because look at the example of the Christ. He was a very honest communicator. He was honest at a time that risked his life a number of times, but he was still an honest communicator. And even though he was a very loving person, he still irritated people around him to the point that they wanted to crucify him. And so, um, but he was harmless. The harm that happened was on the other side, because he reflected people's dishonesty back to them. And that created a problem there. Okay. Um, we're going to go through an example here of communication, a little story I wrote. I'll just read it to you here. This is an example, just a few paragraphs. John is starting up a new business, and his wife seems eager to help him succeed. The time comes, however, when Joan seems to lose interest, and John finds that he has to badger her to help get her to help him. And so he says to her, Joan, have you lost interest in the business? What's the matter? Oh, nothing's the matter, replies Joan. Now, this is deceptive communication here, because something is the matter, but she says, no, no, nothing's the matter. Well, do you think our business will succeed or what? Well, I suppose it will if you work hard enough, she says. What do you mean if I work hard enough? The business is ours, not just mine. Ours, she says coldly. It's no concern of mine. I've got a lot of other concerns to keep me busy. I'm tired and I need to go to bed. Joan then rises and walks off to the bedroom. John is baffled by her behavior. Every sentence Joan has spoken here has been deceptive. She did have a problem. She teaches aerobics class and wanted John to show some interest in it, but he ignored her completely. He also made no comment when she lost 10 pounds and her figure improved. Her feelings are deeply hurt. She is afraid to communicate her exact feelings for fear she will be patronized by John and hurt more deeply. Thus, she suppresses her feelings, but her suppressed feelings do not die, they grow. Joan's feelings grow into an unconscious attack on John. She strikes at John for ignoring uh, his business by ignoring his business in the same way that he ignored her. Now, the problem is now that she's made John upset, the two suffer a loss of affection and the channels of communication are cut off more than ever. At this point, the solution to the problem must come from John. Joan is upset and totally focused on her feelings to the extent that she does not want to even think about the problem or the solution. John, the husband, must ask himself what he did to hurt her. He must retrace his steps to the first sign of the discord. What was the original thing he did to hurt Joan? Was it the aerobics class? He can see signs of how he hurt her by examining how she tries to hurt him. If he can guess accurately and approach Joan with the real problem and show a willingness to solve it, then the lines of communication can be reopened. It would have made everything much easier, however, if Joan had not been deceptive in the first place. When the hurt first occurred, she should have said something like this: John, do you realize how it makes me feel when you ignore projects that I am interested in, while at the same time I'm showing an interest and enthusiasm for things you like? It makes me feel like you are the only one that counts in this family and that nothing I do matters. It makes me feel like not even helping you out in the business. I didn't realize I was ignoring you, he said. I guess I've had a lot of things on my mind. Well, how would you feel if I dropped all interest in your business and act like I didn't give a darn? Well, I'd feel pretty bad. I depend on you a lot, said John. I want to depend on you, said Joan. So I need your support. Well, I'm sorry, honey, but I'll tell you this. From now on, you're going to see a big improvement. That's what the conversation should have been. Here we see an honest communication would have prevented any major hurt and alienation from taking place in the first place. Now, fortunately, John was yielding and willing to give in to Joan's communication needs. This willingness to give is the second ingredient which creates happiness. And we'll be talking about that short time later. But anyway, that's a little example of kind of communication, how typically deceptive communication just creeps in. Joan was not honest about her feelings. Her feelings were hurt. Her feelings were hurt, and she didn't communicate that hurt. She communicated it in a negative way, in a way that didn't really tell John what the problem was. She did communicate it by withdrawing, by giving signs, and people will do this. When there is hurt in a relationship that the person doesn't want to communicate openly and honestly in words, they'll communicate it in different ways, by not being cooperative, by not maybe being affectionate like they normally are, by maybe being quiet for periods of time and not even hardly talking. But people give these little signs. And when you see a mate or a friend or somebody close to you give you these signs of withdrawal, then you need to pull them out of themselves and say, what's the matter? Did I say something, or did I do something that bothered you? Let's talk about it. And if you prod them a little bit, they will normally give you hints, maybe not directly, because people, once they show an unwillingness to communicate, you have to really pull it out of them. And they may come out and with a burst, maybe even just an attack. just to let it out of their systems. It'll just let some anger flow for a while. But that can be a good thing as long as you don't take it personally. Because if you really offend somebody and they hold it back, they may, and then you pull it out of them, they may be somewhat explosive. And if you're a disciple, you can't take that personally, but you have to say, okay, this is good to know. Okay, this is a starting point. And then work toward negating that anger, or finding out what the problem is. And when the communication is open and the person that is hurt sees the other person really wants to help, then it can be diffused. But you must convince the person, look, I'm not your enemy, I'm your friend, you know. And so can anybody here relate to that? Have you noticed that in your relationship sometimes, that the other person, maybe you hurt somebody's feelings and you didn't mean to, but they didn't really communicate it? Can you identify with that?
I've got one, JJ.
Yeah.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Anyway, in my experience with Joseph, there were several times I was crying. I had tears in my eyes, and they were coming down my cheeks, and I was wiping them away. And it's because I was in an embrace with my soul. And a couple of times he asked me what was wrong, and I lied. I said I was allergic to dust, and but it was impressed on me. It was still a lie, and I don't think it hurt him, but it impressed on me. I at that point in time, I was not telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many little temptations we have. Almost every day, you have some temptation to deceive on some level. And if we can, and it takes a lot of intelligence to avoid deceptive communication, but if you can, if you apply your intelligence to be as honest as possible with no intent to deceive or no emotional intent to deceive, then it removes the barriers between you and your soul. It's the greatest thing you can do to remove barriers between you and your soul, is to practice non-deception as much as possible to the highest ability that you know. And all of us have some degree of deception going on, or we wouldn't even be here, because we live in a world of illusion. So it's impossible to avoid all deception and still be here, you might say. But we can avoid all intentional deception. And we start with that. We start with intentional deception, and then we'll find other subtle deceptions that we can unfold and get closer to our soul as the layers of deception are unraveled like the skin of an onion, kind of. Okay. The next, any other comments on that before we move on?
Yeah, JJ, I just had a quick question. Would it be proper or accurate to say that when one attains a status of master, they have moved past that kind of deception that we see in the material world?
Yeah, so anyone that attains the status of a master has overcome all the emotional deception, that is, and also the mental deception. There's deception on a number of levels. The emotional deception is like, if someone hurts your feelings and they'll say, hey, what's the matter? Is there a problem? And you say, no problem. Don't worry about it. Okay, that's emotional deception. And then there's mental deception, where maybe you're running a business and you create a sales plan, and the sales plan has deception in it that causes people to buy more stuff. Okay. So they're buying more stuff because you put a deception in the sales presentation, for instance. That would be more of a mental deception. And I remember when I was first started selling encyclopedias, they had a script they give me that was so deceptive, I had to sit down and completely rewrite it, or I wouldn't even be able to work for them with a clear conscience. And it was pretty difficult to rewrite, so it was palatable to me. But it probably cost me some sales that I didn't use the script as it was given me. But it's and this is a problem with a lot of salespeople have this problem that they have to deal with, because a lot of salespeople are actually taught to use deception to close the deal. And if you can close the deal with telling them the 100% things that are true, then you'll feel a lot better about it. But then there's higher deception still, but the masters have at least mastered those, the mental and the emotional deceptions. But as DK tells us, there's illusions that we're all trapped in from for all lives that are incorporated in any body, whether it be a planetary logos or even a solar logos. There are limitations, and these limitations are caused by some type of deception there. But if we can go to the highest we know and be as honest as we can be and be harmless at the same time, then we can move ahead much faster. And it will take us closer to our souls, because one of the definitions of God is truth. No, God is not only love, but God is truth. And so if we want to be close to the soul and to the spirit, we must be the truth. So everything we speak needs to be the truth as far as we can make it known. So, but what do you do if somebody asks you something that would be that you just don't want to tell them? What do you do then? I see Maria just shows her beautiful face here. It's good to have you with us. What do you do if somebody asks you something and you don't want to tell
Hello, JJ. Thank you. You have to just bring it out in a manner that will the least hurt their feelings.
them? Yeah. Or you can you can just not tell them.
Yeah, or wait for the real moment that it's better to open up about it.
Yeah. It says it's a glory of God to conceal a thing. It says in Proverbs. So God conceals many things from us. There's many things that God doesn't tell us. But what God or his representatives tell us is true, but they don't tell us everything. DK says we'll often be writing, and as you know, he's someone we accept as a master, and often says, well, I can tell you this much, but I can't tell you everything. Okay, and why can't he tell us everything? He says there's certain formulas that the masters could give out to us that actually work, but they would produce more harm than good because we don't know how to use them correctly. So there's a lot of stuff that the higher lives don't give out to us because we would use it destructively. So being honest doesn't mean you spill your guts on everything that you're thinking. It means that what you do give out is true, but you don't have to give out everything that you're thinking. So if someone asks me a question that I don't want to answer, what I will do is first of all, I'll attempt to change the subject. I'll say, well, what about this? And I'll try to divert his mind, and 2/3 of the time that works. So I don't even have to deal with it. Now, if the guy persists and you say, well, I'm not going to go into that right now, just tell him you're not going to tell him. And if you don't want to tell him, they don't just because somebody wants to know something that you know doesn't mean you have to tell them. But what you do tell them should be true. But what's funny is even if you tell people the black and white honest truth, sometimes they will interpret it incorrectly. So even though you give them the truth, they will hear it in a way that registers different than what you said. And especially when you're having an argument with somebody, you notice when you have an argument with somebody that they oftentimes they do not hear you correctly, what you said. They hear what they wanted to hear in the argument. They want you to be wrong, so they're hearing you be wrong, even if what you say is correct. It's kind of weird how that goes, but I've had a lot of arguments with people on about every subject you can imagine, and it's amazing. And when there's a strong disagreement, how difficult it is to communicate in such a way that people hear what you're saying accurately, because they want you to be wrong, because they want to win the argument, so they don't want you to be right, so they hear you incorrectly. Anybody had that problem in an argument before? Let's pick on somebody here. Who's somebody that's probably had a good argument? Tyler, I bet you've had a few discussions with people. Have you noticed that to be the case with you? The people hear you incorrectly when you're having a disagreement?
Yes, and that's, that's on them a little bit, but a lot of times that's on me. Sometimes you think you think that you know your argument, and you assume that people are using the same terms or understand them the same way that you do, and that's not always the case. A case in point, during the debates, Trump mentioned something about coyotes. I don't know if any of you saw that.
Yeah.
And
People misinterpreted
coyotes
that.
Coyotes are people who you pay to take you across the border illegally. And there were a surprising number of people who literally thought that he meant the four-legged animals taking people across the border, or like they were in the Iditarod or something. I don't know what. But
yeah, that was kind of funny. That it's amazing that people would think he was talking about real coyotes hauling people across the border.
Now I'm just thinking about it now. It's like, they're on the Iditarod, and you've got 10 coyotes, and like
that was probably the funniest part of the debate, if you understood what was going on. Yeah, that's a good point. It's on both sides, and sometimes we, even though if what you're saying is true, maybe we didn't word it in a way that the other guy would understand it. So Trump should have defined maybe what a coyote was. But okay, good point.
JJ,
yeah.
can you let Rick in, please?
Oh, how'd we miss him? Okay, yeah, this time for some reason I have to let everybody in manually. I thought I had that lit. Okay, any other comments on that subject before we move on? The next thing we're going to talk about as far as communication, we're still on the first key to happiness, which is communication. And an important ingredient to communication and making it effective is to have an open mind. Open-mindedness is, in the last analysis, open communication. And being an open communicator can greatly enhance a relationship. Now, everybody, the funny thing is, everybody thinks they're open-minded. Now, I've told you this story before about Curtis and I, when we first started teaching together, when we felt we had some enlightenment to share with especially other religious people who we focused on. We're not concentrating on the religious people now because they're very difficult to move beyond their thought forms. But we would, whenever we encountered a strong believer, Curtis would always ask him, do you consider yourself to be an open-minded person? And they would always insist, yeah, I'm open. And sometimes he'd ask him a couple of times, are you sure? You really think you're open-minded? Yeah. Okay, well, then all he'd have to do is present them with an idea that didn't conform to their thought form. And something, of course, that didn't conform to any Christian's idea was reincarnation. So all he had to say was, well, let's open the Bible and read, say, Matthew 16 here, where Jesus asked the disciples, who do you think that I am? And they said, well, a lot of the people are saying you're one of the prophets, like Jeremiah or Elijah, come again. And then we'd ask them something like, well, how could Jesus be Elijah or Jeremiah come again? That means that the people thought that Jesus was reincarnated from Elijah or Jeremiah. How else could he come again? And so all of a sudden that open-mindedness that the guy claimed to have just goes out the window. Another interesting scripture we would give him, like the disciples came to Jesus and said, Jesus, if you're the Christ, it says in the scriptures that before the Christ can come, Elijah is supposed to come back. And where in the world is Elijah at? And Jesus says, well, Elijah has come. And the people have done to him whatever they wanted and persecuted him. And then the scripture says, and then the disciples understood that Jesus was talking about John the Baptist.
Maria's trying to get back in.
Oh, thanks for keeping track there. How'd we lose her?
I don't know. I lost power. My entire trailer went black.
Oh, really?
I just, about 30 seconds later, everything started coming back on. I don't know what knocked her off, but she's trying to get back in.
Oh,
I have,
okay. I just
my
admitted
cell
her,
phone.
so. Okay, I'll have to
I have
keep
an
track of that. Okay, well, we're glad to have you back. So anyway, so Jesus said then, point blank, John the Baptist was the second coming of Elijah. So Elijah was alive hundreds of years before that time. So how could, that would have to mean that Elijah reincarnated as John the Baptist if Elijah was John the Baptist, as Jesus said. So that's another scripture we quoted them that just made their open-mindedness just fly right out the window, even though it says it right in their own scriptures, pretty much point blank. I didn't even want to discuss it. So one of the things you can do to find the truth is take those concepts that are embraced by the authorities of the world and look in the opposite direction. There you will find gems of truth. A lot of truth in that statement. I've often purposefully done that throughout my life. Everybody says, well, this is true, you know. Well, let's look in the opposite direction. Maybe the opposite direction is true. Okay, like if they say the world is flat, well, maybe the world is round. If they say the world is round, well, maybe the world is flat. If they say the sun is hot, maybe it's cold. I mean, you consider everything that's out there. And you find a lot of the things that is accepted by the world is pretty much, it seems to be true. But then you'll find certain things that are normally accepted that if you contemplate them, you'll find a lot of evidence that they're not true. And you'll find a handful of rebel scientists or thinkers that have come up with ideas that run contrary to mainstream thinking. Now, if there's anybody here that probably applies this principle, it's old Rick there. You found that in your life, Rick, that you look in the opposite direction that everybody else is thinking and you find stuff?
Yeah, pretty much. I listen to opinions and I weigh, weigh the matter, and then I do what I want to do.
Yeah. Now, part of the problem with open-mindedness is people have different ideas what an open mind is. People think, well, if I'm a regular Christian, I'm open to what the Bible says. Okay, well, that's not true open-mindedness, because they're open-minded to what they already accept.
I stay open-minded. I tell myself I try to learn a new trick every day.
Yeah, yeah. The emotional person thinks he's open-minded if he just listens to a couple sentences, even though he dismisses them out of hand. Then others think they're open-minded when they only listen to people they agree with. So they think if they listen to other people they agree with, then they're open-minded. But being truly open-minded means you listen to everybody. Now, a big test for me is I come across a bunch of people on the internet some time ago that were preaching about that the earth was flat. And I thought that belief had died out a long time ago, but still it's resurfaced. And I saw a survey among millennials that almost a quarter of them consider the earth may be flat. So this idea the earth is flat is gained a lot of traction on the internet. There's people made videos of it saying, they go up in a balloon so high and the earth, they can't see any rounded earth. Of course, they're not high enough to be able to see the roundness of the earth yet. But, and they use the old idea that, you go to the ocean, you look there and the earth is pretty much a straight line out there. And they use all kinds of arguments, and some of them are pretty intellectual sounding arguments. And so anyway, a couple of these guys accosted me, so I thought, well, I got to be open-minded and check it out. So I checked out, and they say, you got to watch this video. So I watched about a half a dozen of their videos, and I thought, well, that's pretty much enough to test my open-mindedness. All the videos have a lot of flaws, but these guys just can't see the flaws. And so anyway, I was open-minded enough to, I watched about a half a dozen of their videos, wasted a bunch of my time, but I, forced myself to be open-minded. And then I argued with them for a while and then pretty much ignored them after that, because you could go on forever with these guys. But it's amazing. It's amazing how things that are obviously delusional are glommed on to by some people. But the important thing is that a person check out everything. If somebody says, I have a logical reason why the moon is made of green cheese, instead of dismissing him, if the guy claims to have some evidence, well, I'd say, yeah, well, I'd be interested in seeing that evidence, okay, and check it out. But no matter how ridiculous it is, if somebody says they have evidence, I always say, well, let's see your evidence. And usually the evidence is lacking, but once in a while it happens. I think one of the most ridiculous things I ever heard in my life was when I was on a Mormon mission. I was about 20 years old at the time. And we started teaching this lady that was into reflexology, where, you touch places on your foot and it affects the health of your body and other parts of your body. And she told me how this worked. And I thought that was the craziest thing I had ever heard of in my entire life. Thought, how can touching your feet help your health in other parts of your body. That sounds just bizarre to me. Anyway, when I got home, that crazy idea just stuck in my mind. And when I got home, I found a book on it. I thought, well, let me check this out. It sounds so crazy. I want to find out why people would believe such a crazy thing. And I read the book and I tested it out and I found it really worked. So thank goodness I was open-minded enough to check that out. And for instance, if somebody's feeling out a
It's one of the reasons, JJ.
Yeah.
I was going to say one of the reasons emphasize walking so much, because walking massages all the different pressure points and nerve centers in the foot and radiates through your body. It's healthy.
Yeah.
Walking is important. Walking, running.
Yeah, and walking barefoot is really good for you too. Yeah. So an open-minded person adheres more to the following definition: a willingness to hear any opposing point of view and a willingness to exchange facts and data on the subject and follow a logical sequence with the data until a conclusion or consummation is achieved. So the mind remains open then to two-way communication until this consummation is received. So this is important, that a person be open-minded. This is part of communication, because if a person isn't open-minded, then in communication with others, they communicate to a certain degree and then they close down. And so we must never close down. We must always be open. Because as soon as one mind closes, the opportunity for union is delayed. It will not happen at that point. So the two, when they're having a conversation together, must be open to all possibilities. And the Apostle Paul once says, we believe all things. Now, I think when he said that, he didn't mean that he's so gullible he'll believe the moon is made of green cheese and crazy stuff. But I think he meant we're open to believing all things. And this is where we need to be.
I think a key to the answer to keeping communication open is given dozens and dozens of times in the Immortal. When John is asked a question, how many times does he say, well, the answer is yes and no? So so right away you start your answer off, your conversation keeps going, because you can tell them, well, it's yes because this, but it's no because that. You've kept it open intentionally by saying, yeah, the answer is, yeah. Are you fat? Well, the answer is yes and no.
Yeah.
And you got to do some quick thinking.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a yes side of many answers, and there's a no side to many answers. So the full answer requires kind of looking at it from both sides quite often.
Yeah, if you give one the plus side, then he's still going to be like, oh, so what's the negative side? He's already waiting to hear the no part. But the fact that you said it in the beginning, well, there's a yes and a no to this, that opened it right there. It's good, because when you finish telling him the yes, he's going to want to know the no. He's not going to shut up, or walk away. He's kind of all right, what's the other side of it? He will expect that.
Yeah. A closed-minded person, trouble of being closed-minded is when the mind closes, then you're really shutting down the lines of communication. If you shut down the lines of communication, then you're shutting down the opportunity to be one. Now, on the other hand, oftentimes people accuse you of being closed-minded when you're not closed-minded. If they're saying something that is completely wrong and you don't agree with them, they will often accuse you of being closed-minded. But what is closed-minded? Is it closed-minded to disagree with somebody? To say, yeah, well, I've checked this out. You know, I was open-minded about it. I checked it out and I've concluded the earth is round. You know, they've sent up all kinds of astronauts and everything, look back there and taking pictures, and there's pretty much a round earth down there. So um, once you've concluded that and looked at all the evidence, is that closed-minded? Not you've encountered the 100th flat earther that's tried to convince you. You've already gone through the arguments, so it's just a waste of time to spend any more time. The 100th person will still accuse you of being closed-minded, but is that being closed-minded? Not really.
Well,
In
there are
other
some
words-
things that people just aren't ready for.
Not really.
If you want to start talking about the
It's
immortal,
not closed-minded.
if you want to start to talk to somebody about the immortal, you probably wouldn't start off by saying, did you know that our Father who art in heaven is actually a cyclops from Venus? You don't want to start there.
Yeah, right. So also debate is not being closed-minded. Good debate is a sign of being open-minded. And it's the shutting down of communication that produces the closed mind more than anything. And so, but once the communication is established, and this is we get down to the subtleties here, because if you present reincarnation to a regular born again Christian, they will have already concluded that that is the doctrine of the devil and wrong, and there's no discussion necessary. So they will think you're closed-minded if you have already concluded something yourself. But on the other hand, if these guys will not listen to an argument from their own scriptures, then they are indeed closed-minded. So the subtleties between defining open and closed-minded are great, just like everything. This is why when you have two opposing sides, you have a fuzzy area in the middle that makes it difficult for both sides to see the truth in the same way. So what does it take to convince an open-minded person? What will not work to convince a person that's truly an open-minded person is, number one, just making a statement. I've had so many people, they just make a declared authoritative statement and I'm supposed to believe it just because they said it. And no, that's not being open-minded. That's called being gullible. If you believe somebody just because you say it, or just because some authority says it, that's not necessarily open-minded. Authorities are often wrong. Matter of fact, they're probably more wrong than anyone else in some ways. For instance, psychologists are authorities on how to maintain a happy state of mind, yet they have a pretty high suicide rate. So what's the problem there? And doctors are supposed to be authorities on health, yet many of them die at a very younger than average age. So, and are not in that great a health themselves. So oftentimes the people that are experts, and there's nothing exemplifies that more than an attorney. Who misuses the law more than the attorneys of the world? And so the authorities of the world are often wrong. Now, they're right on some things, but they're often wrong on some things. So we don't believe them just because they're an authority. And what doesn't work with an open-minded person is also a bad argument. If you're just making a bad argument, saying the earth is flat because, you look at the ocean and you see a straight line, well, that's a bad argument. Okay. And also So what the person needs to do, if he's arguing with an open-minded person, is to present a good argument. Two open-minded people placed together will eventually become one in thought. If two people are truly open-minded, they will be able to settle their differences. Now, because of different learning patterns and different ways of thinking, they may not reach 100% oneness, but they will come pretty close. They have a good chance of resolving any arguments and being one together. So true communication leads to oneness and a happy relationship with companions, with your soul, and with God, and leads to the final liberation. Okay, next week we're going to the second key of happiness, which is a willingness to give and receive. Before we sign off, any comments or questions on anything we've discussed?
Yeah, today's Maria's birthday. Happy birthday, Maria.
Oh, it is? Well, great. You want to tell us how old you are? You're like 29?
26.
Okay. Well, great.
Happy birthday, Maria.
Thank you so much.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not, here's a belief. I always felt that, you should never ask a woman what her age is. It's just not done.
Well, that's what they say. They say it's dangerous. It's like you don't ask them what they weigh either. Now, us guys are happy to tell us everybody what we weigh normally, but the mysterious gender is not so open about it. On the other hand, there's a growing number of women are proud of how old they are, and it seems like it's not so taboo as it used to be when I was young. It seemed like women were being more open about their age, especially their age. For one thing, I think people are aging a little better than they did when I was younger.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a philosophy too. I wanted to appear before, but I thought the timeline was the same, but we put the hour 1 hour back tonight.
Yeah,
last night.
your time
I'm
change
sorry.
in Europe
Yeah.
is different than here. Now we're changing next week. So after next week, everything will be normal again, I think. So
Yes, I'm sorry for that, or else I would have been here 9 o'clock. Yeah.
yeah, no problem. No problem.
Oh,
Okay.
and by the way, the answer to whether or not the earth is flat is, well, it depends on how close you are to it. The closer
Yeah.
you are, the flatter it is.
Yeah, part of the earth is flat. I just watched a video on the Great Pyramid, and the first thing they had to do was make the earth 100% flat right where they were laying out the pyramid. And that was a marvel of engineering, just doing that much.
On the sand.
It had to be 100% level where they laid the Great Pyramid. And so that was a piece of flat earth right there. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Well, maybe some think it's like a 50-cent piece. It's round from one side and flat if you look at it on the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always more than one way to look at a thing. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I've
anything
got
else?
something real quick.
Okay.
I just, I've been gone for 3 weeks, and it's just been so wonderful today to listen to everyone's voices and be a part of this again. I really enjoyed today's lesson and just hearing everybody's voice again.
Well, thanks, Scott. It's good to hear your voice too. So we're glad you could come.
One thing we're missing is there's no way to do hugs on this.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to project our etheric bodies and give each other a hug and go from there, huh?
We do a virtual handshake.
Yeah,
virtual
right.
handshake, you know?
Yeah, virtual handshake. Okay, my
You can-
friends,
you can
you're
hug-
good. You're
Hug your
good.
computer monitor.
You're a good group, and remember the meditation, and let the that angel of healing be the presence be with you throughout the week. So we will see you next Sunday at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time.
Thank
Long,
you.
everybody.
Thank you,
JJ.
JJ.
Thanks,
Thank you,
JJ.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Good week.
Thanks, JJ.
Good week. Bye.